You're listening to Inflow and On Fire, your weekly podcast companion for finding your flow and stoking your inner fire. I'm your host, Quinn Curtis, artist, mother of 5, and aspiring children's book author illustrator. Every month, our soulful discussions spark from a relevant fairy tale or myth. These help us better understand how to navigate our inner worlds and everyday lives so that we can live more joyfully, bring those big and beautiful dreams to life, and make the world a better place. Want to get the most out of this episode? Well, be sure to snag the free gorgeous study guide in the show notes that includes a written copy of the fairy tale or myth, soulful journaling questions, and other additional juicy resources. Today's episode is for you if you're dealing with any level of burnout or exhaustion and you're just trying to find more fulfillment in your work life and or in parenting, or maybe you've struggled with setting clear boundaries and you want to hear from women who have worked at breaking through the glass ceilings in the corporate world and what it's actually taken to do that. Or maybe you're looking for other women who can relate to, who can give it to you straight about what it's like to achieve some big goals and some of the things that they wish they may have done instead. Today's episode is a thoughtful conversation and empowerment panel made up of 2 of my very dear friends from corporate America, fellow female executives, Heidi Fry and Kathy Alexion. Our conversation is full of gorgeous wisdom and insights. This episode is part of our Selkie Myth series where we're diving deep into issues around burnout and how to rekindle our fire and bring ourselves back to life. Be sure to stay to the end where I'll be sharing this week's Inflow on Fire Bright idea, which will help you integrate all this goodness into your everyday life. Let's get into the conversation with Heidi and Kathy. So today we are joined with our empowerment panel, which is where I bring together badass women who have pushed the limits of the glass ceilings in what's possible in career, raising families, and their own personal growth plans. So these are women who have come from dominating the boardroom to seeking out meaning and magic in life's everyday mysteries. And my hope is that these women's stories will really inspire you. So today I'm joined with 2 of my very dear friends, Kathy and Heidi. I met Kathy Alexion in a global female executive group where she was working for a major household name at the time, and we just hit it off right away, and I knew she was a kindred spirit. And I met Heidi Fry when she was the president and I was the CMO for a multi-million-dollar marketing agency, and we just hit it off right away as well. She's an incredible person also, and both of these beautiful souls have gone through really intense struggles and tragedies over the past few years alone. And I've just been so inspired by how they've not only grown through it, but they've used those struggles as opportunities to go deeper in reclaiming themselves and their magic. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Kathy and Heidi. And I would love if you would just give a quick, deeper little bit of intro about where you're at and joining us from and a little bit of your background. Kathy, are you up for going first?
Sure. So hi, Quinn and Heidi. I'm honored to be here with you. And this is super exciting and a topic I'm very passionate about. So a little bit about me. I have been in IT my entire career, so over 25 plus years. My most recent role was the CIO of one of the largest nonprofit in the world. And it's been an amazing, last year. And so I'm super excited to talk to you about this, returning to oneself and what we're going to be talking about here. So I'll hand it over to Heidi.
Yeah, and Kathy is joining us. She just barely moved. Like we are recording this minutes after she's landed. No, not quite, but really close. Just relocated to Florida with her daughter and her husband. So we're happy you could make this work, Kathy. Thank you. And yeah, Heidi, would love to hear your intro.
Hi. Thanks, Kathy, for the intro, and Quinn. I am very excited to be joining both of you today, and I'm very passionate about these topics. And Quinn and I have had many conversations offline throughout the time we've known each other about these things, and I'm just very passionate about personal growth and understanding my own journey. I started my career as a CPA. I was a partner of a CPA firm for many years and just was super passionate about business and helping businesses grow. And so eventually broke off, was the CFO for some time. And then I've now, the last 4 years of my career, been in president and CEO roles, and have enjoyed my career, have learned a lot from it. I'm the sole breadwinner. My husband stays home, so we have a little bit of a different dynamic there. And I have 3 children, 2 boys and a daughter, and we love the outdoors. That's why we live here in Orem, Utah, right up against the mountain by Sundance. We love skiing and being outdoors. And anyway, just excited to dive in and have this conversation.
Oh, thank you so much. I feel so honored to have you both here, and I know this is going to be a really juicy conversation. I would say for those of you listening, if you're looking for some inspiration on how to push through when you're feeling any sense of burnout, or maybe that you've lost your magic, this is going to be the conversation for you. So let's go ahead and just dive right in. Off the chart, first of all, I'd love to just even hear what your first impressions of the story were, because if I understand it right, both of you hadn't necessarily heard the story before recently when I introduced it to you. So I'd just love to hear first impressions and if it resonated with you at all, or what stood out to you.
Oh yeah, it definitely resonated. I feel like there are times in your life when you're working through things and the universe just has a way of giving you opportunities to learn more and grow. And it felt like one of those opportunities. As I was reading the story, I was like, yes. I just connected with so many of the pieces. So many things just resonated with me so much throughout my life. And sometimes it's nice to be able to think about your life circumstances and put them into this story where it fits so nicely. And I think it just helps shed light on things you haven't thought of, bring more color to things. Anyway, I just feel like it was exactly what I needed right now. So it felt perfect, the perfect conversation for me to be having.
Oh, thank you. I love hearing that. How about you, Kathy?
For me, I really enjoyed the story because it really hit home with the life cycle of how we grow up, how we live, how we learn, and how we come back. And so there's beauty in how we start out and how our ego develops. And as we're developing that ego and the things that are involved with the ego, achievement, money, success, performance, whatever that is that feeds that, at some point you become overdrawn and you get burned out. And there are reminders in your life that you're on the wrong path. And if you don't listen, those things happen. And so part of the cycle is then you come home and you come back to oneself. And it really is seasons, I will say, because I think this happens often. I'm generalizing, but I think in a person's life many times, because I think then there's more temptation to come back to ego, to go through that cycle again. And then, eventually one can hope that you settle down over, after the course of these seasons, to feeding your soul, because the story talks about the soul and the spirit, I think, and then the ego plays into this, and the ego's place in fighting with the soul, right, in a sense. And so it really was profound in the way, specifically, how women have to deal with our life, like just life in general, the season of becoming a woman, whatever that is, just going through, life as a woman, potentially becoming a corporate woman, dealing with the masculine and the patriarchy, having children, being a mom, always being needed, never finding that balance of enough time for yourself and whatnot, and then getting burned out and then having to come back again. So it's just it was a profound story, I felt, and really relevant.
Man, both of your comments are just making me really think about times when I feel when I felt that really loss of soul skin, and I didn't have the words for it at the time. I remember the first time that I found this story, I was coming out of an insane period of burnout. I had been working 80 hours a week at my job, and I had been living that kind of a lifestyle for nearly 6 years, and I had developed significant adrenal fatigue, was starting to get heart palpitations. Like, I was just not well, and I had poured all of my life into my job and left the scraps and leftovers for my family because I thought I was doing this amazing service for them, right? So it was like an altruistic kind of a mindset. But I remember when I first heard the story, I felt so seen and heard because I felt dried out. Like the descriptions that they use for her when she's not got her skin, of like, she's dried out, she can't see clearly, her hair is brittle, her skin is cracking. It's like, oh, I could feel that in my core. And you guys are just kind of reminding me that part of what made that season even more painful than it probably needed to be is I was looking outside of myself and everyone else seemed to be just fine. They were all working tons of hours, they were all pushing, and nobody else was having a problem. And I think, like, you know, I've now seen this pattern happen multiple times in my career for sure, and even family life, where there are seasons where your burnout happens or you're on empty and you don't necessarily have the validation on the outside. Like, I remember feeling angry at the time. I'm like, this is injustice, the way that they've been treating us and driving us to work like this. But everybody else is like just going along with it. So in my mind, it's like the system is broken. And then in hindsight, I'm like, no, I gave too much away. Like, I didn't have clear boundaries. I just let them like rape and pillage my energy and take as much as they wanted. And I didn't say no. And so anyways, it's just kind of making me think how, something that I want to talk about throughout is just, why are women getting burnt out all the time? It doesn't even seem like an issue that we see happening with men as frequently. Like, I don't hear men talking about burnout, but women, it's like a hot topic, right? So I guess a multi-layered question or just discussion to throw out there, but like, have there been seasons in your life, and like, what did it look like for you to kind of have that loss of seal skin potentially, and what made you go along with it? Why was it, what were your justifications, or what did it look like?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one. I think to answer one of your earlier questions, and then I'll follow up with this, like, as to why women get burnt out and men don't. I honestly feel like it's kind of the way we're made up. Men, just their brains work a little bit differently. They're able to compartmentalize way better than women. So I think especially women in high-level jobs, it becomes with a lot of stress. There's women by nature want to give and serve, and you get into positions where there's just more than you have the capacity to give, and it's hard to shut it off. And men just do like a much better job being able to compartmentalize and shut things off. And I don't think women talk enough about burnout. I think women do a really good job of putting on this tough exterior, especially women, I feel like, in C-level roles. And I actually joined probably about 4 years ago, I joined a corporate women's program that actually talked about this very thing. And that was the first time in my career that I actually heard women being open and honest and vulnerable with each other about burnout. And I mean, these were highly successful women, all telling pretty much the same story. And I think Kathy said it really well, how you kind of go through those seasons. But ultimately, I think as women, we just keep giving and giving and giving and giving. And as we get into these careers that are high pressure, I think we just don't know when to say no and when to take care of ourselves. We always put ourselves last and say, I'm just going to keep giving and pushing. And it seems like that's the expectation. And it seems like we're doing the right thing by giving all of this to our company, especially if we're doing it to provide for our families. And I think it's just not talked about. We want to be strong. We want to have the illusion that everything's okay underneath, when really we're just drying out and bleeding ourselves dry, and ultimately get to the point where we are gasping like for air, that we have to come up. And it was very eye-opening for me to see a lot of women talking about this, and it was incredibly helpful and validating for me to understand what I needed to do and how I needed to take a better look at how I'm taking care of myself. And that was kind of some of the curriculum they taught as self-care. And I think, ultimately it's only been probably in the last 4 years that I have realized I need to find myself. I need to, as they call in the story, come back home. And so taking of the sealskin, I think, has been just that expectation, maybe that I just put on myself in the workplace, that's required of me. And especially as women, sometimes we feel like we have to outperform our male counterparts just to get the role, just to be recognized.
If you're listening to the audio, everyone is nodding at this. Yeah, huge nod.
Hell yes.
And so in a way, that's giving up our sealskin. We're saying, I'm going to set my self-care aside. I'm going to set my needs aside. And I'm just going to give and give and give so that I can be equal to my male counterparts. And in a way, we're doing ourselves a disservice and the companies we work for a disservice by not finding that center, that peace, that home, because ultimately we can give more when we have that. But I think it's this illusion, these expectations. And for me, I'm very much a perfectionist. And so when I have a lot on my plate, I want to do it all at the highest level. And so just these perfectionists.
We're all there, huh? The three of us. So.
Yeah. In fact, I wrote down from the book something that really resonated with me. Let me see if I can find it. That it just, maybe I won't be able to find it. Oh, here it is. Okay, so it's talking about the reaction of the last old man constitutes a common cultural response toward a woman who has developed an impeccable persona, but who is all crippled up with trying to maintain it. Well, yes, she's crippled, but look how nice she looks. Look how good she is. Look how well she's doing. When we become dried out, we try to walk all crippled up in order to make it appear that we are handling everything, that all is well, and just so. Whether it is the soul skin that is missing or the culture-made skin that doesn't fit, we are crippled by pretending it is otherwise. But when we do this, life is diminished and the cost to ourselves is very high. And I feel like that quote, is exactly what I feel like I did for many, many years in my career.
God, so much goodness. I want to dive deeper. And Kathy's nodding like crazy. What's coming up for you, Kathy?
Yeah, same. I mean, everything you just said resonates, Heidi, especially that suit with the tailor section that you just mentioned. I would say this last program that I had just wrapped up had this notion, so I want to give credit to them, of the good girl 1.0 and the good girl 2.0. So 1.0 is the people pleaser, the don't speak up, be the good girl. The 2.0 swung the pendulum to the other side and said, I'm independent, I can do what I want. It's my own money. I don't need a man, right? And somewhere in the middle is, maybe where the answer is, right? Or the balance. But I think that when we are being in the perfectionist and trying to be in what I call, or what I've learned as the masculine, as an executive, you're in your executive brain. So there's, you have to make these tough decisions. When you're type A, you're in this organized, detail-oriented, give me the facts brain. And sometimes it's hard to flip on the feminine and soften and be compassionate when the task is at hand. But when we work through that perfectionist, which really is just a shadow of other things going on, that's an abandonment of self. Because if we are deep down in our self and in our, if you will, soul skin, right, we are listening to our heart, we're listening to our soul, we're listening to our feminine, and there's a place for the masculine, but it shouldn't be driving, we shouldn't be driving through that, right? We, what is it, the mind is the, what is that quote? And I'll get the quote, but it's basically, the mind is the tool, the heart, its master. And so, it's really interesting to flip that, I guess. And so when we talk about, I guess, when the soul skin might have been taken, and just going back to the season's theme, I think for me, it happened, I recall very vividly one time, in childhood, and my upbringing of being one of 5 children, and, having, I would say not an idyllic, childhood with 5 kids and, small home and all that. And so, having to I guess create, what do I want to say here, different ways of either survival or ways to get attention or whatever it is, right? When you might have unavailable parents, right? Then you create those things and they carry on through life, and then you grow up, and then you're in the workplace, and now you're in an underrepresented group. You're already, like, if we look back in the day of women, I think Sarah Blakely just recently said that women weren't able to get a business loan and as early as 1988 on their own without a cosigner, right? So it's very, I recently wrote my mom a letter just stating that I was really, I didn't understand until I started doing women's studies what her life was like, the things that we were born into, and I won't go too deep on this, but are things that we were born into she didn't have, like the ability to get a loan and have a co-signer, a credit card, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? So it's, so I guess like in the workplace, we have to, or at least I've taught myself, which I can't say is the right thing, it's just is based on the environment that we're in and the high stress environment, and maybe the expectation that you might not get that promotion if you're too sensitive, or you might, if the whole lean in thing is like, well, why don't men lean in? Why do we have to lean in? Why is there a glass ceiling? There are no men talking about their glass ceiling. You know what I mean? So I think it's, we do ourselves a disservice by shedding our soul skin when it's who we are. I mean, are men talking about that? No, I would love to know if there's a podcast or, conversation about this. We just have a different journey than men as women, and we've had in the past. And so it's just, I think there's definitely cycles of when the soul skin has been taken or lost, frankly. And then I think in the story it talks about how you can see it. I mean, after reading this, I was like, oh my gosh, you can see it on people. They wear it on themselves. Dry skin, right? I mean, literal and figuratively, or the hard life, that people have had, that they made these decisions for whatever their life is or life choices are. Anyway, it's really profound to think of it in this way, and to get back to what does that mean when we just wear it 100% instead of having to keep losing it or shedding it and not being able to find it again or something.
Oh my gosh, you guys are just I love this discussion so much so far. I am just feeling like just reminded of any time that I've tried to create something, whether it was like creating my own business, or out in corporate America and trying to do a role. I felt like I was competing to be like, oh, you said it so good, Heidi, of like needing to outperform just to be considered equal, right? And recognizing now what I was outperforming or trying to measure up to was like men who had the full support of wives at home taking care of all of their children and all of their things, that they only had to go and do their job. Meanwhile, like I, as you guys have done as well, am balancing all of it. And so it is just a really interesting phenomenon. And I'm just sitting here thinking, I wonder part of that skin, like you were pointing out, Kathy, and from that quote that you shared, Heidi, as well, but that it's almost like, we just haven't had great role models, largely because the women just didn't have these options, right? So we're figuring out, what does it mean to be able to be a woman, to have these kinds of choices and possibilities and opportunities. And the only models that we have are how men are doing it, right? And so it is a really exciting idea to think about, like, but wow, what if more women just really start leaning into and embracing, like pulling that sealskin on, staying connected to themselves and their magic, and showing up strong in these areas, like being able to balance more of that masculine and feminine. Because I'm even thinking, not everybody listening will have a corporate job or will be an executive. And, even just some time I spent working with my local charter school and watching all of the women on the boards and the, trying to run the school and do everything. I mean, they weren't executives and they were killing themselves. Even like the front office lady was just like overextending and they had such fluid boundaries and everybody was overgiving. Like, I think the average lifespan of a board member at the school is like a year, because they get so burnt out they can't even do it longer than that. So I just mean that the pressure is everywhere. I don't know that it's just in the executive suite, right? It's like, it's all over for women, but also this is very new territory that we're kind of pioneering as women, to what you were bringing up, Kathy, of like, it's a different world for women than it has been in the history of the world, So, God, any thoughts come up with that? I just threw a lot at you guys.
Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, I just think it's kind of women's nature to just give and give and give, even in the role of a mother, giving everything to her children, not leaving anything for herself. I see that all the time. And I think it's just like being more vocal as women and standing up saying we have got to have more self-care, have more boundaries, take care of ourselves, because by doing that, we're going to be able to show up in such a better way in the world and society. And we do live in a different time. Probably within the last 3 years, I've seen a huge shift, especially with all the DEI initiatives and things like that. I've seen a huge shift in people specifically seeking out women for executive roles. I have people reach out to me all the time saying, we want a woman on the board. I've joined organizations that are very difficult to get into, but I get in because I'm a woman, because they want diversity. And there's not many women in C-level roles. And so in some ways, it's an opportunity for us right now to be the voice, to make the change. Just today, I was interviewing a woman for a director level position, and it was so interesting the way she navigated the interview. She's probably maybe a decade older than me, but I was just shocked at the things she was telling me, and the things not only things she was willing to do, but when I asked her specifically what she wanted, she felt uncomfortable telling me what she wanted. She wanted me to tell her what job she deserved. And I took that as an opportunity to just tell her, hey, like, it is okay to tell me what you want. It is okay to be direct. It is okay. And she didn't like the term like fighting for the role. And when I said, I want you to fight for the role, and I said, not fighting in the sense that you're stepping on someone else or you're being unethical, but fighting in the sense that you want it and you're standing up for yourself and you're telling me that you want it. But it was so interesting to just be, to be interviewing that woman and seeing kind of her career. And she's had a long career, but that's kind of what she felt like she needed to do, is to kind of fall on the sword and say, hey, you just tell me what you need from me. And I think the more we get women in higher level roles who have influence and who are actually talking about these things and empowering other women to stand up for themselves, to fight for what they want and need, that's very healthy, and that we can do that. Men do it all the time and they don't think a thing of it. They just, and women feel like they can't do that. And so to me, I think it's just having more conversations, like, and shedding a light on something that I feel like, even looking at my own mother, when I was reading the story, I thought of her and just the sacrifice she gave in her career and to raising the family, and just never put herself first. And ultimately that ended up just leading to major burnout later in life. But it's like, we can't keep repeating this cycle We have to start having the conversations and standing up and being vocal when we see a woman who is maybe not feeling like she's able to say what she needs.
Yeah, I love that.
Ultimately, the more I get back to myself, the more I feel like I'm prioritizing my self-care. I just feel like I show up better. And I think it's backwards. We think that the more we push, the more we drive in some, like, we're going to be able to better compete. And I think that is a false, like, that's a myth. That's a lie that we tell ourselves. It's actually going home to ourselves, rejuvenating ourselves, working smarter, not harder, where we're going to be able to bring more value to the table than women who are trying to outwork, out hustle us, and I've seen that over and over. And I think I'm realizing, and especially now as I'm getting older, I just can't rely on that anymore. Like, earlier in my career, I could out hustle anyone. Like, it's not even an option anymore. And so I think I've had to, it's like I dried out. I had to say, I need the sealskin. I have to learn how to navigate it differently, which has been super helpful for me, And it's almost like it took that learning, it took that stumbling to understand and realize, like, how I can add even more value by taking the time I need to go home, to have the respite, to put on the sealskin, and that it's not even a competition. And if I don't even think about it as a competition, if I just think about it as me showing up, like, fully giving in a space where I can give because I'm not dried out and I'm not burnt out, that is always going to be more powerful and more, like, I'll be able to drive more value and influence than somebody who is trying to out hustle me or run me without, utilizing the sealskin to give them what they need. I feel like I had kind of this aha moment as I was reading this and even answering some of these questions, and as I've just this year been doing reflection, that I think I thought that work would fill a void within me that I was looking to fill, by working hard, by pushing, by getting a certain title. And ultimately, as I've come home to myself, I've realized it has nothing to do with work. Right. And in fact, the question that I feel like was so powerful, that made me think, like, when have you felt most like yourself? I would have thought, oh my gosh, like at first I thought in work, like, when have I felt most like myself at a job? And when I just kind of took a step back, all the things that I wrote had absolutely nothing to do with my job. And I think for most of my life, I was looking to get value from other people in the workplace. Like, that's where I was looking to gain my worth, is by climbing the corporate ladder, breaking the glass ceiling. I thought, oh, if I accomplish these things, then I'll feel worthy. Then I'll feel of worth. And ultimately, I felt like those things actually just took from me. And I think my sealskin was always there, but it was like I didn't even recognize it anymore. And ultimately, this year, it's been coming back to myself and understanding who I am outside of the corporate world, without a title, without anything attached to me. Like, who am I actually? And when I answered that question, when do I feel most like myself? It was like when I'm in nature, on a hike by myself, like laughing my head off with a close friend, connecting with my husband and children, serving other people, all of these things that literally have nothing to do with my work. And it feels very liberating to kind of take off that mantle or that thing I've been carrying around, where I have to do more, create more, build more, scale the business larger, and ultimately say, no, nothing. If I look outside of myself to find my home, I will never find it. And so it's been taking the time to be alone, to be out in nature, to connect with myself, to understand myself, to connect with my kids and my family. And that's where I have felt more at home than I have in any job or any career that I've had.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think looking at climbing the ladder and outsourcing my self-worth to my achievements, right? Versus insourcing, which is exactly what you're talking about, like having time for yourself, being with your family, checking in with you, right? And what that is. And I think the point you made was great about that you probably always had your soul skin there. And for me, it was like just in the shadows. You know, I thought I had it. I thought it was on this entire time. But like, alas, nope, it was, you know, it was just there kind of being neglected. And then, yeah, I agree. And the reflection, once you know, get the title, you know, achieve these goals, then what? Yeah, you can keep going, but is it fulfilling you in the way that your soul needs? And, you know, for me, the answer is like, no. I mean, now what? That it, you know, all this drive comes from something else that doesn't even come from my soul, right? Of, you know, if we were all children right now, right? And we're playing on the playground, just this curiosity and this innocence, would, you know, Quinn, would I be like, oh my gosh, Quinn, do you want to be a CMO one day? Heidi, are you going to be a CEO? Do you know what I mean? Like, I'd be like, no, I want to be a veterinarian. No, I want to be a farmer. You know, like like, those are things that my daughter have said, and I'm sure your kids have at some point, you know. And so that innocence, the like childlike wonder is the essence of that soul skin, right? That, you know, coming back to home for me also is in nature. Like, I think about when I'm in flow, it's for whatever reason when I'm doing my sports, like when I'm snowboarding. You cannot, when you're like in the trees snowboarding, you know, these crazy runs, you have to be there or you're going to die. Like, you're going to hit a tree and you will not be happy. You know, or mountain biking or something in the woods, hiking, whatever it is, outdoors, or just being active. And, you know, sometimes it's just as simple as like doing nothing on a hot day, you know, and like, I always think about like those Country Time lemonade commercials where it's like you're sitting on the porch with a cold lemonade or in a field of green in the woods, you know, like just there's something so like it feels like home, you know, and, you know, it's hard to sometimes get there often enough. I think that the story says the same, right? That we go there, but then we get sucked out of it and, you know, and whatnot. But it is, it's a practice, I think. It's definitely a lifestyle to be aware that that is needed in your life. It's almost like more than self-care. It's, I don't have the word for it, but this reclamation or this, it could be as easy as like a coming home ceremony where you're recharging, but it's a different type of recharge or something. I don't know. Quinn, what about you? What does coming home look like for you?
Oh, you guys, this is so good. I just keep thinking like the coming home journey started to happen for me years ago when I realized, oh my gosh, I've just been focusing on building a career and not building a life. So that like building a life question has really helped me orient myself back home better, because I'm so guilty of outsourcing my self-worth to my career. Like, that was a perfect line. Oh my gosh, that hit home so hard. Goodness. And so it's just been the past few years where I've started to see like, okay, like a great question that I've asked myself is, okay, I reach the goal. What happens the day after, right? Like, okay, we get the big fancy title at the job, or we make the certain amount of money, or we lose the certain amount of weight. What are we doing the day after? Like, is a good barometer for me to see, like, does this actually change our life in a way that's significant, you know? And one of the things that just kept showing up with that question is I would just see, like, anything that I hoped was going to solve things in my life I could see myself the day after being relaxed, having fun with my kids, like having conversations, going out in nature with them, eating a quiet meal together, laughing with friends, and painting and drawing and spending time in my journal. And so I just asked that question enough over time and kept getting those same answers that I started to really say, like, this is ridiculous. Almost all of those things are within my control now. Like, I don't need to wait for somebody to give me permission to have those, or for me to finally hit an arrival point where someone is going to give it to me, or I'm going to feel worthy of having it, right? And so that's upended my entire life in the very best ways, where I feel like more and more my lifestyle is mirroring more so what helps me feel more at home within myself and in my life.
Yeah, that's awesome, Quinn.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Powerful.
I think, Kathy, I loved just your Country Time lemonade commercial style, because I think, especially when you're so busy with work, we multitask. We always have to have multiple things going on. And it's almost like we feel like that time to ourselves isn't as valuable somehow, because we could be doing something. And especially as executives, you think of efficiencies and, like, you know, how can I do the most in the shortest amount of time? And I've had to just kind of rewire my brain and say, how do I find space? How do I find stillness? How do I find peace? I don't always have to be listening to a book or a podcast when I'm doing everything. And, like, I need that space, because I think without that space, how can we get back to ourselves? And I liked your example of even just us talking on the playground, because a big thing that's come up for me is play. Like, yes. As children, we play. We have playtime. We schedule time for play. As adults, like, when is the last time you truly played like you would play as a child, and just, you know, enjoyed yourself with reckless abandon and laughed and did all the things? And I just don't know that. Oh, yay.
I had to buy a book on play a year ago because I had really gotten disconnected. I'm like, how does one play as an adult? That's bad. That's a bad sign.
Yeah. And it's like, it's that play. It's that childlike nature, which I love talking about in the book, The Women Who Run with the Wolves book by Clarissa. Yeah. She talks about it's the child that calls to us. It's the child's restless. Yes. Like, it's actually the child that brings us back and calls us back to our sealskin. And I think it's so interesting, because it's also, I think, those childlike qualities where you're just present in the moment. Like, kids aren't worried about, like, or ruminating on, like, what's going to happen or what happened in the past or what they're going to do in the future. They're just present. They're in the moment. They're just playing. And I think it's those times when I feel the most at home, when I'm just in the moment. I'm just allowing myself to just enjoy, to play, to be still, to have peace. That's what is so connecting. So
play is so important. There's a book called Prime to Perform, and they talk about purpose. What was there? 3 P's: purpose, I think it's performance, and play. Like, how even at work you have to play to do your best work, to have that. All the power comes from the creative, right? And having that space and that gap, you know, just you mentioned that space to just breathe. And it's so important. And I remember years ago, my therapist said, what did you like to do when you were a kid? Like, let's go back to the things that you enjoyed, you know, that you did as a child. And I was just like, okay. She's like, did you like to sing? And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. And she's like, did you play with Barbies? Not that I do that right now, but, you know, and like just trying to get those creative juices going. And what I realized is a lot of my hobbies over the years are all around sports. Like, I'm competitive and really performing at like a crazy level when I'm snowboarding or mountain biking or whatever. And then I just engulf myself in that. And that was my play, to just be with a group of people doing those fun things and having outings. And but that's not necessarily the play that we're talking about, right? It's right. And so it's the yes, that fed my soul, but it also was me blowing off steam from like having really stressful jobs, right? And like I needed an outlet, and that was my outlet. You know, people run as their outlet, or, you know, do whatever exercise, but it's a different type of play. And it could be the same, right? It did feed my soul for all intents and purposes, and still does, but in a different way now that I'm not connected to that, you know, the perfectionist that needs to do that. It is more from the child, the inner child, and like the authentic self that is enjoying this, not to win a prize or to win, you know, anything, but just because you enjoy it, right?
Oh, yes. And I also feel like, God, it's hard sometimes to let ourselves play, and like for it to not have an outcome that we can see, right? Like it's so, like I last week I was just, I'm in between roles right now, and I've been like playing with, am I going to just be able to just fully lean into the author illustrator path right now? And I was cutting paper and coloring with colored pencils like my life depended on it. And my husband was coming home from work each day, and I would like look up like I'd been in a fever dream. I was just like, no worries, honey, everything is fine. I've just been cutting paper and coloring with pencils all day long. It's not a big deal. But it was like there was shame, and there was like these moments where I had to be like, yeah, this is okay. This is okay. I promise this is okay. Because my adult self is so hard on that. Like it just really struggles to give room for the good play that you're describing, Kathy, that's like where the juice is, right?
Yeah.
And like from that, all sorts of cool things have actually happened. Like it was, in theory, highly productive time. But in the moment, I couldn't have treated it that way and gotten the same outcome. I had to surrender to like, yeah, this is what we're doing today. We are playing with scissors and colored pencils as if we are 6, and we are not 6, and it's okay. You know, it's do you guys struggle with that too? Have you guys struggled with that as well, of like letting yourselves actually play, like surrender and be playful, or not have the agenda and the outcome attached and the ROI on the playtime?
That has been an incredible challenge for me, and that is what I'm working on. I've been working on that probably for about the last year now. And now I'm getting to the point where I'm finally like letting myself surrender and enjoy and play. And to me, that's more ROI. That's the ROI I'm looking for right now in my life. I'm like, I would rather be able to connect with myself, feel peace, feel joy. But it has been hard for me to rewire my brain and say that that's okay. Like, well, am I really being productive? Like, do I deserve to have this time to myself? Do I deserve to enjoy myself? I've had to really change the way I think about it. And it's been remarkable. Like, I went on a hike on Saturday, and I was like giddy, you know, and I wasn't even doing it. I was just doing it just to be out in nature. I went on a trail I've never been on. The view was incredible, and I didn't listen to anything. I just wanted to be silent with myself in nature, and I was skipping down the trail. I was like doing things like, you know, opening my arms up and doing things that just like I wouldn't normally do, just trying to like fully embrace the moment and just connect with my surroundings. It was amazing. And this is not me. Like, it's taken me a while to get here. But like just going into those moments saying, I want to just connect with everything around me. I want no distractions. I don't even go with a friend. I go by myself so that I can truly just, not to say you shouldn't go with a friend, but I'm really just trying to connect to that place within me that I can have what I need within myself. Is it fun to have a friend? Yes, but I don't need a friend to enjoy a hike and to enjoy the mountain and to enjoy myself. And so it's like changing the definition of ROI, because ultimately, what is this life? Like I'm like, that should be what life is all about, is getting the most enjoyment and peace and satisfaction and fulfillment out of life. It doesn't have to be, you know, something financial or monetary or something like that.
I love that. Let me just say that I love your use of ROI in terms of play and like self-care. That's so awesome. To add to that, I I'm new at this also. I'm only coming up on 3 years new at it, and it's because I had a major soccer injury. So I was playing soccer like 4 nights a week as my outlet. I was joking with a colleague of mine. We had this like CIO group in Seattle, and they would do dinners, and I would just be like, thanks, but I want to go play soccer. So I would go play soccer instead. And she's like, good for you, because I just thought, I can do that later. I need to go run and be outside on a nice night. And so anyway, I have this soccer injury that is a really tough one to heal. I'm a couple of years in, and I can't wait to get back to soccer, but it's probably not going to be at the level I used to play as a midfielder. But anyway, that has forced me to slow down. So I've noticed that when I have injuries, it is a forcing function that I don't even listen to it. All I am is about rehab so I can get back on that horse and get going. But this time it's different. I'm also a different age. I'm also shouldn't be playing at the level I was playing at, all these things. But regardless, I was neglecting my strength training, and I'm just not a person who can go out and run a half marathon, every week or every couple of days playing soccer without strength training. And so I did it to myself, but it really has forced me to slow down and take a hard look at what is the purpose of these things and where am I spending my time, and where are, I think you said it best, Quinn, the scraps that I was giving to my family, to my husband, whatever, of the exhaustion. I'd be exhausted from all these other things. And then, so the prioritization really has flipped, and what is really important, and where does the time or the ROI of play come in? And is it just hanging out at the beach and playing in the sand and walking the beach, right? It doesn't have to be at a certain level or for that performance. And I think that things do happen for us. They do, and we just have to listen. And if we don't, the universe just has a really keen way of just smacking us upside the head even harder each time. I really believe that it does. If you're not listening, it will you will get, you'll get spoken to in ways you probably don't want, like an injury that's going to take a couple of years to heal, or whatever, right? So it's really, really interesting. What about you, Quinn?
It's just making me think. I forget sometimes, because when I'm connecting with other women who have really kind of nailed, how do I even say this? We know how to maximize our time. I think all of the three of us could agree, we could maximize the minute of every single day, and we have very successfully, right? And by contrast, I think that there's a lot of women, most of the women that I interact with or meet throughout the day or in the neighborhood or at the school, or they are baffled. They're like, how are you doing so much, quote unquote, in a day, right? Which I don't necessarily want to take this in a productivity direction. I don't think that's what this is about, because I'm just fascinated as I'm hearing both of you guys talk about it. It feels like, and I've experienced this as well, going from maximizing every bit of your time for the career, for the goal, for the achievement, when you finally shift it back to maximizing, quote unquote, the time for yourself. It's just beautiful how it's actually fitting in. I'm loving hearing what you guys are doing and what you're fitting into your lives, or what you're building your lives around, maybe is more an appropriate way to say it. It's crazy inspiring, and I think there's still so much weight for women around what's actually possible to do with their day or their life, that they even like you were saying, Heidi, too, about just even, am I worthy of doing this? Am I okay to do this? I don't know. Those are just kind of the thoughts going through my head. I don't know if anything is coming up for you guys with that, but I think it's really interesting to watch this shift and see you guys just sucking the marrow out of life now versus, running at 1,000,000 miles an hour. It's same hours in a day, but this other way of doing it, this way where you're home with yourself, where you've got your sealskin, feels like this embodied way I guess in like closing thoughts about this topic for a second, or just finishing my thought, is just I've been really toying with how much control do I actually have or need to have in a day or over all the things in my life. Like, what is actually required of me, because I had been operating in the maximalist perspective of I control absolutely every minute and I've got to show up with a plan, and it's like an agenda, and it's intense, right? What I'm shifting into is I'm leaning more into wholeness and into embracing more of my feminine receptivity. Is I'm kind of waking up to, like, every day's kind of got an interesting curriculum already, and I have goals, I have dreams. I'm not saying not to have some of that, but I'm watching my day unfold in almost a very maximalist way. Like, lots of things are happening in my day, lots of beautiful things, and lots of stuff is getting created, but I'm not doing it the same way. Is this making sense? Like, it's just, it's fascinating to me.
100%.
100%.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Heidi. Go ahead.
Oh, I think that I definitely thought I was in control. I think this is also something early in my career. I thought I was in the driver's seat. I was in control. If I planned everything to the T, if I did everything perfectly, then I would reach my goals. I would do everything I needed to do. And I think in the over planning, in the over scheduling, the over ROI, we basically are saying, we're like denying the universe's hand to come and join us in the dance, to kind of help lead us.
Yes.
And it's like, Quinn, like you're saying, like, there's like, you show up and there's so many things that come to me during a day that I would have not even recognized or said yes to because my day was too planned out. It's like we don't even leave space or room for things to be introduced or given to us that we probably actually need more than our plan. But it's like I had this like death grip on my plan, and this is what it has to look like, and this is what I'm doing. And now I'm just kind of relinquishing the control and just showing up to have the experience and saying yes to things like this podcast. Like when Quinn asked me to do this, I'm like, I'm not good at like public, like I get nervous to speak in front of people. This is something that stresses me out. And I'm like, maybe I shouldn't do it. And I just said, no, the universe presented this opportunity. And I'm so glad, because I feel like I've had such an amazing conversation with both of you. And I got so much out of this reading. But this is something I wouldn't have had time for or wouldn't have made time for in the past. And I've accepted things into my life that have added so much color and so much value and so much vibrance, well beyond like my controlled, thought out, like I have to execute this plan just so. And so, relinquishing control has been huge for me, and just allowing myself to find my passion, what truly lights me up.
Same, 100% same. Like I finally am at the place where I'm just doing a trust fall and letting the easy button, like hitting the easy button and letting things just happen. I'm not saying I'm not doing anything or I'm lazy all of a sudden, but what I'm saying is, like, I just have released control and things have just been falling into place the way they need to, and it's been really empowering, because what I'm realizing is it really does come from the self. It's all in here. And if we declutter and insource, it's all here. And I'm like, oh, that's the trick. That's the spice of life, right? Is to trust yourself, to look inward. It's all right here. And I was recently made aware of an answer of the question of when is selfish too much. I just want to add this, I guess, as we're closing this down here, but I just thought it was really relevant given we're talking about the self and releasing control and whatnot. Bernard de Clairvaux, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he is, like, in his modern interpretation, I think he's a philosopher, psychologist, years ago, and he kind of talked about selfishness, and there's like 4 levels of selfishness. I didn't know this. Do you guys know this? Have you heard of this?
Fascinating.
Okay, this is super fascinating. The lowest level is I love me for my benefit. So that's like the unhealthy selfish. I love me for my benefit. The second is I love you for my benefit. Wow. The third is I love you for your benefit. And then a new one came out that is, I love me for your benefit. See the difference?
Wills. Yeah.
Right? And so it kind of goes back to that trusting ourselves, giving ourselves space. Like, if you take care of you, it benefits everybody else. Just like if mom takes care of herself, right, it benefits everybody else. And I think that's such a hard thing for women. It's hard for me to be like, oh, it's not selfish to take care of myself? What? You know, like going for that walk in nature, going on a retreat, signing up for a program, whatever, is so good for us. Like, that's our soul skin. That's it right there. That's the magic, is I love me for your benefit. Anyway, I just wanted to share that. I thought it was a nice, like, piggyback on what Heidi just shared.
Yeah. No, thank you for bringing that forward. And it's just making me want to ask you guys, just, you know, it was reminding me of the story, honestly, of how she would dry out, right, when she didn't have the skin, and then needed to go back and immerse herself in the depths, right? Go back to the sea, you know. And so I was just curious, like, what are the signs, or what do you watch for that kind of helps you recognize, oh, I think we need to go and replenish, or we're missing a seal skin here. What do we need to do? Maybe not even, we've talked about some of the bigger dramatic ways as far as like major burnout, but what are some of the subtleties that you see in your day-to-day life that are pointers for you?
Yeah, I feel like when I'm too much in my head and not in my body, when I feel myself go up here and I'm disconnected with my body, myself. I have a physical therapist that works with me, and she's amazing. And she always talks about, like, you're making decisions with your head, Heidi. You need to make decisions with your whole body. Your body knows. Your soul knows. Get out of your head. Like, make decisions with your whole body. What does it feel like? Like, asking yourself in the moment, what does this decision feel like in my body? And when I notice that I'm in my head, I do exercises to get myself back into my body. Like deep breathing. I have a beautiful mountain view. I'll just sit back in my chair and just look at the mountain, just kind of absorb nature. Anything that kind of just helps me feel again and stop the spinning that's in my head. And so I can really start acting and making decisions from my soul, from my body, from my heart.
Thank you.
All of the same, Heidi. Yes, all the same. When I'm super task focused and it's not coming from the heart or body, then I'm like, okay, I'm off. I don't have a calm, centered, nervous system, right? I can tell when the wire's been tripped. I get anxious, anxiety, or like, ugh, right? I think I'm quicker to react than to be more thoughtful. Like, there's like action. Oh, we got to do this, instead of like, whoa, hold on, let's take a breath here. And yeah, like calming down to get into a healthy state to respond. And so I think those, you know, whatever that tripwire is, but those are some that I do the same. I have a couple of exercises that I'm like, oh, I'm not in a, you know, a calm or healthy nervous system right now. Hold on, let me do a couple of things to get back to baseline.
I love what you guys are both pointing out. You're pointing out also just how important the awareness of it is. Like, that as soon as you catch it, you're trying to take some action. I mean, I hate using that word. But you're trying to like do something to support yourself, right? Yeah. Trying to do more. No. But I think that is so key, because at least the way that I used to operate, I would feel bad. All the things you guys were describing, like anxiety would be top of my list probably as like the biggest indicator. And that's all in my head for sure. Just a circus of thoughts. And I would stay in it though, you know, like for days or for weeks or for months, or like be in a funk for a year. Like, and that's what's really shifted with this awareness. And I seeing you guys nodding aggressively seems like for you as well. Just like being able to stay a little bit more conscious that as soon as you see it starting to happen, you're taking some sort of self-care action or way of getting yourself back centered and back home to yourself. Is that a fair reflection, or anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, I think the ruminating, I'm a master ruminator. And what a waste of time and energy. And my husband used to say to me, I don't know where you go, but I guess I'll see you in a week. Like, he's like, okay, I don't, like, when you come back, I'll be here. Because, what about you, Heidi?
Yeah, that's a perfect description. My husband definitely knows when I'm ruminating and in my head. But Quinn, to your point, it's all about awareness. It's like, I don't even think I knew that's what I was doing, or that I was going somewhere. I don't think I even realized what was happening. And that's why it's also about just curiosity and compassion, and not even beating ourselves up when we do that, but just noticing and understanding what's happening, and then you're able to do something about it. Because I lived years of my life not even understanding what was happening in my head. It's taken me time to learn and to understand and to be able to have the awareness to recognize and then do something about it.
Years. I'm with you, Heidi.
Yeah, it's
Years,
not something you just, like a snap of a finger. It's
it is retraining, reconnecting, neural pathways, just reprogramming old habits. But to your point, I didn't even know I was doing those things. I just didn't, you just like, I liken it to like being asleep. You're just, everyone's asleep in different areas. You can see it more in others. You can see it in yourself. And when you wake up, it's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. It's really, it's eye-opening. It's kind of embarrassing sometimes too, because I'm like, I had no idea. I thought I knew. I thought I had it. No.
Oh, it's almost the shift from like, this is just life. Work is just hard. Life is just hard. Like, I think that's kind of how I just was operating too, in that unawareness of just, I just feel bad. Like, I don't know. Maybe I should take a pill for that. I don't know. And so what I'm loving just in like bringing the story together is this is part of what makes these fairy tales and myths so potent, is that there's ways to look at the story and see ourselves in all of the parts of the story. That like what Kathy, you were bringing out in the beginning, as far as the ego being what kind of takes the sealskin from the soul. And as Heidi, as you're describing, like just the thoughts, and with each of your triggers that both of you were sharing, like I could see it's so much ego, right? That's kind of snatching it and stirring things up, taking us out of the present moment. But how exciting it is to be able to have that awareness. So I think like I'd love to hear just any like closing thoughts of anything you wish we would have shared, or what you hope somebody takes from the discussion or from thinking about the story. But just what I would love to point out is just how like this story truly changed my life. Like this was, I had been feeling burnt out, run down, not listening to myself, out of my body, completely in my head, like all the things, getting so much sicker and sicker every day. And I could hear a bunch of people talking about how we should avoid burnout and we should work smarter, not harder, all the things. It didn't make a difference. When I heard this story, it finally like woke me up. And so my hope is like that as you're listening to this discussion or thinking about this, like everything that we're adding on top of this, of the myth and the story and just bringing to light, is to hopefully just, give it a little bit more depth and flavor and application into daily life. But please don't negate the opportunity to just feel into the story yourself and see like what does it light up, or what does it inspire you to do. I've been really excited to see what, especially with each of you bringing what you've shared today as well, like what it's brought up for you. And I think there's so much power in myth for that reason. I guess that's my myth soapbox for the episode, but I'll keep getting on that soapbox because I think that the example of, you're missing your sealskin, you're all dried out, is very different to feel inside of your body versus like, you're just burnt out because you've been working too hard and you're overextending, you're saying yes too much and you're not playing enough. Like it kind of gets too intellectualized. So I hope that everybody will take what we've been sharing and like really like breathe it in and feel your way through it, because that's where the inspiration will come for the little ways to surrender or to play more or to do the things that are going to bring your soul a little bit more back. But yeah, what thoughts come up for you guys in just what's
I would
coming up for
just
you?
say to not discount the struggle. I mean, I don't know that I've really touched on like what it's taken me to get to this point. It's not like one day I'm like, oh, I'm just going to change and be better. Like there was some really, really, really tough struggle and some pretty dark moments that allowed me to even find this and to even understand. And I think one thing that I really loved in this whole story is just in like fairy tales in general, sometimes you see like the main character like recovering treasure, like when they're groping in the darkness. And one of the things that she mentioned, and I wrote it down, Clarissa, she said, nothing makes the light, the wonder, the treasure stand out so well as darkness. The recovery of the divine is done in the dark of hell or Hades. And so just understanding that if you're in the darkness right now, it's okay. Like it's part of the journey. The light will stand out brighter. I mean, ultimately, if you're in a dark place where you need, medication or assistance, I'm not talking about that, but like just in searching for your soul and understanding, she even talks about this honing device, that it's there. And we may have to stumble feeling around in the darkness, but we will find it. We will stumble across our soul skin. And so it's just part of the journey, and embracing the light and the darkness, embracing, those periods of time where we struggle, I think has been extremely important for me. Not shaming those times, but kind of embracing them when I find those moments, while hiking on the mountain and I feel like myself and I feel that light. It's because I had to find that darkness first as well.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Heidi. I couldn't have said it better myself. I, in fact, highlighted that section in the book about the darkness, and that was really profound because, yeah, just to add, like, that's where the gems are. Like, as Brene Brown says, don't tap out. Don't tap out when you're uncomfortable. That's where it is. And so if you're feeling burnt out, that's a message. Listen to that message. What is it? Go there and nourish yourself, because then that's where all the good stuff is, and you'll find the answers. It just takes time. Anyway, yeah, that was really well said, Heidi.
Ooh, and I think what you guys are both inspiring me is just the thought also that sometimes it's not the what in our life that needs to change, it's the how, right? And so I've been really surprised as you go into the dark and you're reclaiming some of those pieces. My outer life might not look that different to some people, right? But it feels different. I feel more alive in it. I feel more connected to it, and that changes everything. It changes making dinner from a task and a chore that was draining to something that feeds my soul and helps me feel more connected to my people. So it's fun, I think, that way to go back and kind of reclaim those parts of yourself and see how your ordinary life starts to look a little bit more magical and have a little bit more wonder and play just naturally baked in that we were missing the whole time because we weren't connected. We were in our heads. Gosh, we could probably go on. I'm taking us going on forever, but this has been just such a gorgeous discussion. Thank you so much, Kathy and Heidi, for joining me today to talk about this and these important themes for women. I really hope that those listening leave feeling inspired and encouraged and energized to find their way home and reclaim those parts of themselves that bring them alive. And just thank you again. And we will talk to you guys soon. Thank you so much to Heidi and Kathy for joining me. This whole conversation was so rich. I especially loved hearing your stories and insights about outsourcing our self-worth to achievements, career, and other people's opinions of us. It really got me thinking more about the concept of insourcing, meaning spending time to connect to our own sense of worth from inside of ourselves. As promised, today's Inflow on Fire bright idea is to take inventory of what makes you feel worthy and deserving. To help, I've made a handy checklist you can find inside this month's study guide that will make it easier to identify where you're currently basing your worth off of, as well as helping you check in on if you want to keep it this way and how to shift things if you'd like to make a change. This exercise is game-changing. Find the study guide in the show notes so you can take a few minutes to experience a breakthrough with this exercise today. Also, I would love to hear your thoughts on your experience with the Selkie myth or any of the discussions that we've been having, including today's episode. So if you'd like to contribute and share those thoughts through a voice memo that we might share even on this podcast, please head to quincurtis.com/engage so that we can hear what you have to say. In Flow and On Fire is a weekly podcast to help you find your flow and stoke your inner fire so that you can live more joyfully, create those big and beautiful dreams, and make the world a better place. Living in Flow on Fire isn't a destination, it's a daily practice. We make this show every week to help support you in that practice with deep inspirational insights and real-world examples of other soulful people who are leaning into this journey also. To better support your Inflow on Fire practice, we send you each week's episode via email direct to your inbox so you never miss a beat. Go to quincurtis.com/email to sign up and stay inspired. Also, when you sign up, you'll get access to my free Living in Flow and On Fire guide. A step-by-step path to find your flow and stoke your fire today. Sign up at quincurtis.com/email to amp up your inflow and on fire lifestyle with me now. This has been another episode of Inflow and On Fire, a weekly podcast cheering you on to follow your heart and come more alive. It can be tough to stay in flow and keep your creative fires burning bright, so please take this podcast with you on your journey. Subscribe so we can keep fanning your flames and cheering you on each week. If you got something out of this episode and haven't already left us a review, please do. Positive reviews really help other people who need this to find it also. I'm your host, Quinn Curtis, artist, mother of 5, and aspiring children's book author illustrator. I'm here creating this show because I know just how hard it can be to even just stay excited and engaged in our everyday lives. With so many demands for our time and attention, it can be especially tricky to prioritize those nudges from our heart and soul. However, the costs like depression, disconnection, anxiety, overwhelm, loneliness, lack of fulfillment, and so much more are really high when we don't. So every week I gather soulful stories, inspiring ideas, and incredible people to help us stay connected to our inner compass and remember what's most important. Ultimately, I created this show because I need those regular reminders too. But my hope is it can also inspire and help you to keep going and bring more of your magic that's inside of you out into the world. We need it. Special thanks to Avesa and Maddie Love for our theme music. Thank you so much for listening, friend. In between now and when we connect again, stay in flow on fire. It matters and you matter.